I've sat in every spot, I think, at some point in the last 5 years.
We used to have one more chair up there. He sits over here. Oh, okay. He sits there.
We don't have any corner.
And then Tara.
So we want to stay space sometime.
Actually, pretty good.
We didn't have to because there's like 3 in this side of some crunch. It wasn't like 2 kind of, like the middle kind of split.
Yeah. Dinsmore's supposed to join by Zoom. We've heard from him.
He's coming in by Zoom.
And I haven't heard from Andy or Mark.
That'll be the first time I actually see their faces. Be monitoring the whole everybody stay away from each other.
Dave, any sign of?
Nope, there's not. And we are live right now. So 5 o'clock and start streaming.
You sent the agenda, right?
Huh? Well, Nikki did probably last week, Thursday, I think. Wednesday or Thursday.
Spring 7.
You sit in as a cardboard? You sit in?
I know there was a big controversy.
There must be 3 of us, right?
Thank you.
It needs to be 3, correct?
Nope.
You're not able to. You count, just not on the power board.
I count as a person.
Exit all 3 of them, we'll see.
A little reminder from Nikki to talk close to the microphones.
Hey, turn off your mics if you have Snapchat.
We turn it on, right?
It's already on.
We have an official one.
It's my first meeting in over years.
Did you reach out to Mike?
Yes, he said he's just finishing up and we'll get on.
Hello, you there, Michael?
I am.
Okay, I'm going to transition you into the room, so go ahead and say hi. Go ahead.
Hi, Mike. We can hear you.
Oh, good. Was I the last one?
Yeah, just the three of us here.
Okay, sorry, just getting in my car here. Hello.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good. Now I can you guys too. Now I got my earpiece in. Okay. Are we?
Todd, myself, and you are represented here, and we've got Rick and I'm sorry, I can't remember the councilman's name. Craig Coates is here. Yes.
Am I the only one on Zoom here?
Yep.
Okay. All righty.
Mark will probably join us here in a bit.
Okay. Has the recording started? Are we good to go?
Good to go.
Okay. Welcome. Sorry I'm not live today and have to join us through this meeting, but I'm still up in Provo today. So, yeah. But appreciate everyone taking time and welcome to our meeting today. Did everyone get the agenda and minutes from the last month's meeting?
Yep.
Yes, we both did.
Okay. Let's do first. The agenda. So, any questions on the agenda?
Looks pretty straightforward.
Yeah, there's a little bit lighter meeting today, I think, than others. So, can we get a motion for the agenda?
I'll go ahead and motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, so Todd first and Randy second. Todd, go ahead and start us.
Spriggs, aye.
Meyer, aye.
Mark, I see that you just joined. We're voting on the agenda for tonight.
Hauser, aye.
And Dinsmore, aye. Okay. Minutes from last month. Any questions, comments?
No. Pretty straightforward.
Just FYI, Nikki's back. Jessica, I mean, sorry.
Jessica.
Yeah.
Did you have something to add? Okay.
So motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, so is that Randy first and Mark seconded?
Yes.
So Randy, go ahead and start us.
Meyer, aye.
Mark.
Hauser, aye.
Todd.
Spriggs, aye.
And Dinsmore, aye. So, okay, thank you. Okay, Rick, I think you're up, right?
Sure, this should be pretty painless meeting tonight. We'll excuse Jeremy. He wasn't able, he emailed me and said he had a conflict and wasn't able to be here tonight, and appreciate Councilman Coates attending with us. So it'll mostly be reports on for tonight. For the last month, we've been working diligently with Sitla on our new substation site that we're going to call Grapevine, which is up by exit 13. Councilman Coates, in his professional side of the world, is helping us get work through those. I think we're really close. We've got a few little things to finalize with Sitla on that. So exit 13, which is the Main Street interchange that's coming up. We received drawings, I think it was on Monday, with their proposed, their current layout. And so we've sent that off to ICPE, which will do the evaluation on what impacts we might have on our transmission structures. UDOT's done really well, actually, to avoid most of the structures. I think we'll have anywhere from 2 to 4 from what I'm seeing just from the plan view that will be impacted. There'll be some underground distribution that'll have to be redone as well. So in fact, I have a meeting with ICPE tomorrow up in Salt Lake after one with UAMP. So that's progressing. And again, we're in the beginning stages there, which when they talked about an interchange there, I thought it was going to be really difficult, but how they've had to realign the road to intersect with Interstate 15, it actually avoided the two, would have been the most costly structures to deal with, have foundations. So they've done a good job and working well with them. Our March peak was 17.7 megawatts, about the same as February. On the generation side of things, Mike and Jake and Tyler Stocks have been working on getting the units ready to go. We're doing every 3 years we have to do an emissions test and submit the results to the Department of Air Quality. And those tests are actually, the first unit was tested today, and they'll do one tomorrow and one on Thursday. And the test went well. We don't anticipate any issues. It's the first unit came in well within what our allotted range of pollutants are. So one thing we did do on the generators, CAT originally, the spark plug type that originally came with the units, they've replaced those over the last couple years. And we were about halfway through from spark plug failures, and so we just decided to replace all the remaining, and so the units all have the, I guess, latest and greatest spark plugs in them, which usually is what they'll detonate and when a spark plug goes bad, and then we have to shut down for a while. And so I think it'll be much easier just to hopefully avoid those detonation issues. So we are looking into a little bit of maybe pre-purchasing some gas for the summer, but the price is hanging up there, so we're keeping an eye on that. It would be doing something somewhat similar with what we did with the power, but would do it on the gas side, maybe purchase 4 to 6 hours of gas. But right now we were working pretty diligent, and then Putin did his thing in Ukraine and shot the prices up. So we're keeping an eye on that. Hopefully they'll come back down a little bit. As far as projects the crews have been working on, Cactus Lane is, from our standpoint, is done. The Public Works Department have replaced the curb and a little bit of asphalt and some sidewalk we had in a few places. The only thing that remains is, I think there's 2 poles that need to be removed, and TDS needs to move their attachment up on 3 of the poles. So we're getting close. I know Todd can relate to that. It takes a while sometimes to get them to move. They've actually done a better job on this project than some of the others, but they have to move a little booster, and they've moved that off the pole onto a pad, which is good for us. So we'll be patient on that. Most of the other projects that the crews have been working on have been pole replacements. There's been several onesie twosies here. One of the larger areas was down just off of Nilton Drive. In fact, one of the poles, when they removed the wires off, became pretty apparent it was broke under the ground, and the wires were actually what was keeping it up. So we've got lots of those
Do
poles.
we have a master plan on replacing the old poles throughout the city or under our area? Or do we just replace them as they need it?
Well, I guess, and that's something we probably should look into as a more formal master plan, but the crews are out there, they know where they're at, and we try to target the ones that are known to be bad. But sometimes, like on this particular pole, it was in worse shape than you would think from the outside. It was a couple feet down in the ground where it was rotted off. So one of the other projects that we're starting on would be 2nd North from Main Street over to 300 East. That'll probably be the next bigger project. Right now it kind of goes zigs and zags, kind of like First South was. And so we'll straighten that out. And again, just we're focusing on the bigger lines first, the 3-phase lines, and then working our way in. So there's plenty to do. There was, the downtown part, a lot of the original poles from when the city bought it over 30 years ago. So a lot of the poles are hitting their useful life. So we received bids for the relay panel upgrade for our Main Street sub. That'll go to council next week. Believe it or not, they actually came in a little bit under what we had estimated for budget. We'd estimated about 125,000, and they came in at I think it was 111, if I remember right. So that was actually a pleasant surprise in today's market. Usually it's the other way around right now. Yeah. On the solar front of things, we only had 4 new solar applications in March. One thing to note on that, after discussing things with Jeremy and the Thad, our city attorney, we found out or discovered, for lack of a better term, that some of the companies were signing the agreements like they were the homeowner. So they would like sign Todd Spriggs and turn it in. I don't like that. And so now we're requiring notarized signatures from the homeowner. So, and most people that hasn't been a big issue. In fact, I was telling Jessica before the meeting that now we're starting to get the applications, the agreement document ahead of the drawings and stuff. And so I don't think it'll be a big issue, but it was a little surprising when we kind of stumbled onto that we had a homeowner bring in a signature and dropped it off to Bonnie, and we compared it to what they had submitted online, and you could tell they weren't even close. They said, "Oh yeah, we do that all the time." I'm like, that was pretty scary, at least in my mind. So that's one change we've made, and it really isn't a change. It's just that's the only way we could come up with to make sure at least the homeowner did sign the actual document, and hopefully they've read it. That's the other challenge on that. So,
Rick, do we allow DocuSign?
We haven't, because it's the same kind of thing. We've had the solar companies just go in and play like they're the person, and I can't tell the difference, So, yeah, it's just kind of interesting that they didn't see any issue at all with that. So,
Have we had any more issues with the solar companies acting like they're representatives from the city?
Not that I'm aware of. At least I haven't got any calls, and Nikki and Jessica haven't said anything. So, not that I'm aware of. It was a little surprising that he was okay with it. And he says, well, they just said they'd take care of everything. And so I guess it's a different approach than I would. I wouldn't want to have an agreement signed by some other company. I don't even know if they saw or read it, which is the scary part, because that explains how we bill and that kind of stuff, and they need to understand that. We're working on the underground standards update. Nikki was able to plow through all my messy red lines, and I've got that back. I haven't had a chance to proof it, and so probably not next month, but I'm hoping in the June meeting we'd be able to have a draft for you guys to start looking at. And you know, it's a simple, easy 70 or so page read, so nice and exciting too. So that's kind of we had a dig in today. We really haven't had, knock on wood, many outages or anything of significant on that front, so it's been fairly quiet that way, which is
Right after our meeting last month, it seemed like the next morning power was out throughout Washington, like all the streets and lights and stuff like that.
we did have, and I can't remember the exact date. I thought it was before last meeting, or I would have brought that up. We had some lightning arresters fail at the river substation over at the base of Foremaster, and so there was the east side of St. George and the west side of Washington was out. We were out for about 35 minutes. St. George was able to isolate and reroute how they fed us and got us back actually before some of their load, so they did a good job on that. So it's just a equipment failure. Fortunately, fairly simple to fix. They've replaced all the arresters that are of that same vintage in the station. So I don't know if you remember, it was probably 3 years ago Christmas, we had a 138 arrestor fail on that same stub, and so they've pretty much changed all those in there. So it's kind of a prevented maintenance. So that's what that one was. And we're split, not the whole system gets fed from that side. So Coral Canyon and Sienna Hills stayed on during that period. So any other questions on the system locally or what we're doing? And again, we're getting ready for the summer. This weekend's supposed to be like 88, 89. So
are we anticipating some more brownouts? Just asking.
I don't foresee that on our system. The impact to us is going to be potentially the power costs. You know, I think we can get the power. It could be pretty pricey. That's why we've done, you know, the 5-year contract, as well as we bought the summer product. But we're still, for a limited number of hours, we're still going to be in the market. Probably in the 150 hour range from July to August. So during those peak times, otherwise you'd have to buy to cover that, and then you'd be super long the rest of the time. So we're trying to balance that as best we can, but that's I think our biggest exposure. And we'll talk a couple of things in here on the UAMP side of things. Couple other things. The department annually does a safety meeting on bucket truck rescue, and that was their big safety meeting in March. We set 5 poles for public works that they'll use for their AMI system at various locations across the city. We helped set a pump at the Green Springs Golf Course, changed bulbs in the baseball fields. So we've been out kind of helping others a little bit this month, which is great and fine. We actually even spent about a day and a half over at Santa Clara with one of our backyard digger, helping them replace a pole that was a little bit challenging, and using our backyard digger, it makes it a lot easier. So. And they'll come and reciprocate that at times too if we're short, and so it works out really well with the neighboring cities. And I think that's pretty much as far as the local system, and the other items would be UAMPs. Any questions online?
No, I don't have any.
Okay, so you ready to move on to UAMPs?
Yep.
Okay, UAMPs, our March meetings actually were pretty straightforward, and they went really quick, which was good. Our April meetings actually will be here in St. George at the Marriott, I believe is where they have it. They're going to have it, and coupled with that, on April 20th, if anyone's interested, they're doing, they call it the UAMPS Toolbox. I think you should have got notices on that. If you're interested in attending, let me know, and I'm sure you can still attend that with no problem. It's the afternoon of the 20th. And I could get you an agenda too if you're interested. So I mentioned briefly that historically for the last 5 years, we've had a 5-year purchase of 7 megawatts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. It was about, I think it was November of, about a year and a half ago, we entered into a new 5-year contract that started last Friday on April 1st. And it actually varies how much we have on, they call it high load hours, which is about 8 in the morning to, I think it's 11 at night, 16 hours, and then low load hours are the other hours. And so this contract allowed us to vary month to month, which will help us come this summer. Because we signed up for more in the summer than we did right now. And so because it changed the dynamics of, how that particular purchase, we're monitoring that so far. The first few days, I think it'll do us well. My only regret on that is we didn't sign up for more. But hindsight, a year and a half later, is just that. We thought what we did was best then, but who could have predicted some of the prices and what's going on right now? So that's a positive thing. Again, we made a summer purchase for June, July, August, and September, and so that's been kind of the focus right now. Particularly July and August, we bought at 190, and the current pricing for July and August are in the mid 200s. So September, we're a little bit under the 190. So I think overall we're still going to come out on the positive side of that purchase. And we didn't buy as much in June and September on either side as we did in July and August. So
is there ever going to be an opportunity to buy more? Or are you going to?
Yeah, we continually look at that. UAMPS as a group, they've actually approached some of them about a different 5-year product, because there's been some interest, and a lot of the brokers don't want to even do a product like that right now. I think they think they can make lots of money other than tying them up that far out in the future. So, but yes, I mean, that's kind of a perpetual, we're always looking for ways to try to save money and improve that. So the one thing for the UAMPS and Washington County in general, on the 23rd of March, I pulled a few slides from the Southwest Utah Technical Task Force. They've been working on a study. We have meetings before the summer and after the summer each year as the 7 utilities in the county. And the study is not finished, but it's pretty close. These are some of the basic assumptions. I probably won't bore you with a lot of those, other than to point out one of the changes we've had in the last 3 to 4 years is there's a large amount of solar up in the enterprise area that comes into the Red Butte central substations. And it's creating, as far as the transformers go, it creates kind of a secondary peak at 8 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock, because the load's staying up, but the solar's dropping off faster than the load. So it kind of creates, the transformers actually peak later than the rest of the system because of how the solar is working in there. So they're actually studying 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock and the different impacts there. This is probably the most important slide for you guys from the presentation. Last year, and this is all 7 utilities in the county, so this is basically the county's electrical load. What last summer was 591 megawatts, which is up from 548 the year before, 503 in 2019. So you can see these last, particularly 2 years, have been really steep in growth. It's probably not a shocker to anybody in this room that's, lives down here. Is that me? The red is the generation, which primarily consists of the solar I mentioned and the St. George turbines that are over in the Creek area. And you can see that big change from 142 in 2020 to, 295. That's the second of the large solar came on last summer. And so you can see this net load, this 296 is quite a bit less than the 406 of the previous year. So again, the challenge there is if you have a cloudy day in Enterprise, it may not be cloudy down here, and so that can really affect those outputs. So, and there's also this note up here. There was about 20 megawatts of load that was moved in the Newcastle area from this system to one that's fed out of the Cedar area. So in reality, there's another 20 megawatts in there had that been on, that had historically been on there. And this is where engineers try to figure out what's going on, but that's the average growth, or the growth rate since 2003, and you can see it jumps all over. The last couple of years have been pretty significant. And again, some of that depends a lot on temperature of the summers we have. Years ago when I worked for St. George, 1 degree would make about 10 megawatts difference on the accumulated system. So, if you have a extended spell at the 113 to 115 range, you'll see a dramatic increase in load just by the temperature, even if you didn't have all the growth. So, and this is what the study, in my mind, it's a fairly conservative projection for the future years, in the 2.5% to 3% range. You go back to looking at this, the majority of the years are above that. So it's been an interesting discussion with some of the Rocky Mountain planners of how they view the growth and that. So that's why we have the meetings twice a year and try to catch that and make sure they're up to speed on things.
So they're telling us in 27 we're getting a downturn.
Yeah, and this is based on, they call it
got spikes down 26 and 27.
This is based on, they call it load and resource submittal that all the utilities have to give them. And this is, they aggregate and basically add them all up. And for whatever reason, everybody's numbers, showed that dip. Now, I really doubt that's going to happen. Again, the further you go out, the less certainty. But I really think even the front end years at 3% is pretty conservative, or on the low side of things. I could see us being more in the 5 range as a group. So, but that's what they use to plan for the larger system. And so this is a text-based format of The upcoming improvements, the top one there, the Red Butte RAS, is supposed to be online next month if they can get the cable they need, the control cable. That's supposed to be here on time, but they've had problems on other projects. So that was their caveat on that. They have all the relay panels. They just need the wire to connect it up. One of the things that the study has shown the most economical for the group is we're calling it right now, the 138 system, all the lines originate out of the St. George sub, and they just radially go out, and there's open points that are left normally open. So we call that a radial system. A loop system, you run those multiple lines all closed in together. There's some advantages with that. The challenge, electrically that makes sense, but you have Rocky Mountain, UAMPS, Deseret, Dixie, they all own pieces of that loop. So getting the business model and agreements together, that's not a small task. So electrically, as engineers, we can say that's a great thing to do. But the study shows that should be done, and so that's kicking off that effort to see, can we work it out on the business side of things. So the next major improvement will be this one, where they install a transformer at the St. George sub, which is the one just above the hills, just as you go into the habitat there. And that's projected for the fall of 2026. And then these others, depending on, they hesitated to put years on there. That's a project that's actually under design, and the transformers are 2+ years out right now. But that middle, or this column here, shows roughly what the area load is projected to be and the improvements that would need to help support that level of load. So, and the biggest thing that would benefit Washington County the most is, right now all the lines come and converge at the Red Butte Central, which is right up there by Central, where you go over to Pine Valley. And then there's 4 lines from there that come to the St. George sub, and they're all in a common corridor. You've probably seen those lines. They're off to the east as you drive up to Enterprise. So if something was to happen in that corridor, a fire, a mudslide, or something like that, all of our sources basically could be compromised at the same time. So what the study shows, the best solution would bring a line, and they call it 3 Peaks up here, which is just outside of Cedar City. And you would come roughly down the I-15 corridor and then loop into the substation that's out there by the jail in Purgatory. That will give us our best system, because then now we'd have 2 sources in independent routes. And Rocky Mountain reported they actually have started the study effort on that project, which is a real positive thing. I would suspect if they started today with all the right-of-ways, the hard part, and getting through all the environmental and all that, I would suspect that's a 5 to 10 year project. And so it's good that they are starting to discuss it, starting to budget some money to start on the right-of-way of that. So, and as you can imagine, as time goes on, it's just going to be harder and harder to get down that corridor, because it's growing up there too. And
yeah, some of that would be fairly high-end property, expensive property to get easements through.
Yeah. So, and they have lines of various types that you see as you go up to Cedar City they could probably utilize some of those existing right-of-ways or expand them in some form, but it's not a trivial, simple project, and so it's good that they are it's on their radar and they're starting to work towards that. But I would suspect that's, like I say, at least a 10-year plus type of scenario. So that's on the, again, was probably the biggest thing for the area project, or the Central St. George project, was that report. The other UAMPS projects, we have the Payson Nebo plant, which is the natural gas plant on the north side of Payson. It actually only ran about a week in March, and that wasn't anything to do with the plant. It was just a pricing that they were able to buy it cheaper than it would be to run the plant. So there's nothing wrong with the plant or anything like that. It's actually running really well since they did that control system upgrade. They've done better than I thought they probably would. Doing that kind of change, significant change, they've really fared well. Our Vale project on the Kern River pipeline, it's doing well also. They reported they're only running about only 2 of the 3 gas compressors, so the amount of waste heat is lower than what it could be, and we're getting between 500 and 800 kilowatts typically out of that plant right now. On the government and public affairs project, we're evaluating the possible opportunities or grant opportunities that may come out of the bipartisan infrastructure bill that was passed by Congress. And so we're working with UAMPS as well as their consultant back in DC to look for opportunities. A couple of things we've talked about is a AMI system, a more sophisticated metering system, somewhat like the water department's moving towards, and we've actually done some preliminary investigation with some of the suppliers to get a rough idea. Right now, I'm guessing that's a $1.5 to $2 million project to switch them over to that.
Think we'll ever go to a tiered system?
As far as
or pricing and
like time of day?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. Because of some of the pressures, we're kind of on, the city's on a ultimate time of day use. I mean, we have a different rate basically every hour. But I think as you see the push for EV vehicles, if we don't send a different pricing signal, they're going to come home from work and plug it in at the same time they turn on their air conditioner and cook dinner. That would allow you to give them some motivation to maybe put it on a timer so it starts charging at midnight or something like that. And believe it or not, with the solar, sometimes the morning, early afternoon is some of the cheaper wholesale power rates right now, is because there's so much solar going onto the system. Again, it's supply and demand. And so it's actually what used to be the cheapest was at night has actually shifted or levelized that out for a longer period. So, but yeah, and this AMI system, that if we went to one of those, that would allow us to do that. The meters that we have right now, we couldn't do that kind of rate. So that's one of the reasons we're looking at least to have the capability of doing that if we elected to do that. But I really think that's on the horizon, whether that's 2 years or 10 years, I can't tell you right now, but somehow I think that would help shape our load a little better if we could get people to shift. And
with the technology that's available now, it would be nice. I can pull up on my phone and see
Right.
what I'm using power-wise at my house and how much I'm generating, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
That would really, you would think, curb how this normal citizen uses their power.
yeah, I think there'll be some that it's not that big a deal to them and they'll just still do it however they want. But I think there's a significant part that would pay attention to that. I mean, I pay attention to my pocketbook, and that's a mechanism that we could communicate that, hey, during this time of day, it's pricey for us, and it would correlate a little better. than what we currently are doing. On some of the solar projects, speaking of solar, we have the Red Mesa, and we've got the Steel 1A and 1B that we approved last month, and the council did approve moving forward with the 1B project. On the Red Mesa, I think I reported last month that we did get a force majeure letter. Basically, they're wanting to move the COD date from, it was supposed to be June. Looks like it'll be November, December. This is the one with the Navajo Reservation, or the NTUA, the Navajo Tribal Authority. The one, they just barely got the letter from NTUA actually requesting a higher rate than what they'd agreed to. And so UAMPS was looking into that, and on the surface, they didn't feel like there was any contractual obligation to do that because of some of the supply costs they're running into there. And so that's kind of an asterisk on that one. We'll report more. I haven't heard anything since the meetings in March. On the Steel Solar project, that's been on track. However, they got a force majeure letter on that one, on the solar panels. Apparently, U.S. Customs now requires them to be able to demonstrate that forced labor wasn't used in producing those in China. And so they're trying to find out if the panels have actually been produced, if they're sitting on a boat, exactly where they're at. So it looks like potential that commercial operation date was supposed to be December. It may move out 2 or 3 months, but it still should be on for next summer, is what they're telling us. And then the solar 1B, it's supposed to be on for next summer as well. They haven't said anything formally on that, if anything will impact there. So there was just a lot of the stuff that you keep about as far as supply chain, those issues that we're running into directly, and it's impacting some of these projects. So we'll keep you posted on that. And none of those are going to be there this summer. So my focus is, as long as they can make it by next summer, we're not going to be too dramatically impacted. So on the Enchant project, again, there's a lot of these projects trying to address our load growth. It's slated right now to come online for us in November of this year. There's some transmission access issues they're working through with PNM in New Mexico. They're working on an alternate transmission right option to use some Tucson Electric's capacity rights. So don't have a lot of detail, but that is moving forward. Again, it seems like you take 2 steps forward and 1 back sometimes. As long as we're not taking too many back, I think we'll be okay. They'd hoped to have to where we could maybe at our next meeting have the power purchase agreement for your consideration, but I haven't seen a draft of that at this point, so they're still working on those details, and we'll keep you posted. The last remaining new project is the Muddy Creek, which is a cousin to the Veo. It's a heat recovery on a gas compressor station up in Wyoming. They're making progress there. They're working on with Kern River. They said Kern River is a little more, and I think rightfully so, protective, for lack of a better word, of that site, because it's at the head of their whole system. So they're concerned of any impacts that our heat recovery stuff could have. Like if something were to happen that they couldn't compress the gas, then that impacts their business. And so they're working through some of those details and if UAMPS needs to get an insurance policy or something like that. So I don't think there's any thing that would stop the project at this point. There's just, again, details as they start working through some of those agreements that, we're just waiting on information on. One thing on that project is the last cost we had was, I think, about 18 months old. So they're refreshing that with Ormat, the supplier, and kind of going through dealing with these cost impacts, so we know better up front what those costs are going to be. On the Colorado River project, the biggest thing there to report is, again, not new news, is the lake is way down. Lake Powell, I think the upper lakes are doing a little better, and so that's what they're trying to figure out, is how to keep the level high enough that they can generate through the summer. But it is getting really close, and that doesn't have as direct impact to us because we only have about a 0.5 megawatt from that project. But what that does is it forces people that normally get a larger allocation, now they have to replace that power somewhere else. So again, it's a supply and demand. If they can't produce it there, those people are going to have to buy it on the market just like us, and so that drives the price up. So again, it's not a direct correlation, but it is, because we're in the same market to compete for that. And the budget for next year on that resource is still really, it's under $40, but it's still a 30% increase over the previous year, because they're not getting the same output but have the same fixed cost. And so again, just basic economics there. So had a friend that went over, that works for ICPE, that went over that way, and he had boated on Lake Powell a lot, and he said he was just shocked at what he saw, and compared to what he has for years and years boated over there. So,
which seems surprising to me when you see the snowfall that they received in Colorado. I don't know why it's still going down. I don't understand all of that, but yeah, it's almost depressing to see the levels, what they are right now.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody's seen those reports and stuff that hasn't been seen since the mid 60s and stuff like that. So, on the Horse Butte, the wind project, UAMPS did send out the request for proposal to look at repowering, putting larger capable turbines on the same structures, as well as adding a few more. They said the RFPs are due back on the 8th, so this week. So at the UAMPS meetings on the 19th and 20th, they should report, and we should have a better idea if it makes sense to even pursue that repowering project. And last but not least is the carbon-free project. On that one, I would say mostly positive news, with one caveat at the end that so the one of the biggest things that they've done is engaged Excel as the potential probable operator of the plant. Excel has experience in operating other reactors, and they've been in negotiations for several months, but now they finally actually did release a press release and identify Excel as the operator, and that helps with coming up on this next cost estimate. They'll be able to refine the operator numbers that are in there, because they'll actually have somebody on board that has that experience, and then they're engaging with New Scale to understand this plant versus what they've traditionally had. So that will help solidify the numbers that we get in late August. So that was a real positive thing there. On the New Scale, again, they're the manufacturer of the modules. They're on track is the main thing there in the middle for their standard design approval with the NRC by the end of this year. And the standard plant design was reported 2 or 3 months ago. New Scale's focusing on a 4, a 6 module, or a 12 module configuration. And so their goal is basically to get the basic plant design of those 3 types approved by the NRC. So when somebody comes in and says, basically, I'm building one of those at this site, so it becomes more of a site specific review as opposed to a whole technology review. So again, the main thing to report on that, both the standard design approval and the standard plan design, they sound similar, and they are, but there are some differences. They're both on track to projected the 3rd and 4th quarter of this year. And then the Class 3 estimate is scheduled. Let me try to make that a little bigger. To be, it's late August, if my memory serves me right. And so one of the things they're doing is, at this bullet point, they've sent out 116 packages to different vendors with the amount of detail as they can, as much detail as they can, to try to refine the pricing of these different packages. To, again, the goal obviously is to get that estimate as accurate as possible, so everybody continue to make informed decisions on carrying forward with the project. They said it's slightly behind schedule and slightly under budget, but they feel like they can keep it on track to meet that August date. And this is just more details of what they're adding to the estimate, or getting more detail than they had before. A lot of that is some of the support costs, the warehouse, fire station, admin building, those kind of things. And the COLA, again, is the combined operating and licensing application. Again, they're working on different activities, and their report is everything's on schedule, or even a little bit ahead of schedule and under budget, which is be really neat if that could continue in that trend. And I don't fully understand all what they're trying to do with the limited work authorization. My understanding is that would allow some work to begin before the full application is approved. But the NRC would approve it, so you're not running the risk that they come back later and change their mind. And that's been a problem with some of the previous plants, as they've been building and then they come back and change their mind, and they've had to redo things. So they're cautious of that, but that's a way to help improve the schedule and keep things on schedule. So they're looking at opportunities to do that. Again, a lot of the work that's been done so far is soils and site characterization. And so those activities have been on track for April or up through February and March, and then they did take a break from the site for the winter, but we'll start back up in, well, I guess it is April now. So and these are some of the things that they're planning on doing April through through May. So again, I think almost all of those are site specific to support the design when they get into detailed design. They are engaging the NRC and are having ongoing meetings with them, so it's not like the NRC isn't going to be familiar with the package when they get the COLA. And they're having meetings, ongoing meetings with the Department of Energy, Fluor, NewScale, and the CFPP project. So Sean, who's kind of he's the lead for UAMPS. He's built reactors before, and he seems to be doing a very good job. I mean, I've never done a project of that magnitude, but he seems to understand things and how to keep things going in the right direction and focus on the critical path items and make sure they're addressed. So again, the report on that is things are on track. On that last item, they're continuing to work on the contracts for the three main players, the NewScale, who's the manufacturer, Fluor, who's the constructor, and Excel, will be the operator, and those will be along with UAMPS, will be the main players to make the project go. The one hiccup we had was the top item there, Clark in Washington. They had signed a letter of intent for 70 megawatts. They remain, as that top bullet point says, supportive and interested, but Washington has a statute that I don't fully understand it. It's basically they can't obligate as a joint project. It's interesting to me, and it stems from a failed nuclear plant years ago, is where the legislation came from. Grant is also in Washington, and they don't see it as a problem. So I'm not quite sure how the two entities in the same state can view the same statute differently. So Clark's still interested, but they've indicated that they're going to put their participation on hold. Grant is continuing to move forward along with UAMPS on securing the transmission side. Is their main concern left for Grant is to physically get the connection to them. They said there's other Washington PUDs, public utility districts interested in letter of intent. And one of their motivation is Washington has, I believe it's a 2030 deadline that they have to be almost, I think, carbon free by that deadline. And so they're starting to see the writing on the wall, and there's not a lot of options. And so that's why you see the interest from that is from some of the state mandates that they have. And so I think, again, the Clark one was a little disappointing that, again, they didn't stop being interested, but they're not actively gonna pursue negotiations to come in and sign on the dotted line, basically. So I know there's three of you that will be attending the meeting on May 3rd and 4th, and there's this Emerald PUD will be there with you attending that. And so there's continued interest by others. Again, that's the challenge. I was talking to Councilman Coates before the meeting. That's the challenge, is getting people to sign up. And if we could get Grant to go, I think it'll start flowing fairly quickly at that point. So it's easier to sit on the sidelines than get in and play the game, I guess. So that's my UAMPS report. We we probably need to talk about next month's meeting because it will conflict with the attending. My suggestion is probably cancel May's meeting since 3 of you will be dedicating quite a bit of time to that. If the Enchant PPA was to come up, we could maybe call a special meeting with kind of a one-item agenda. If we get that far down the road, but right now I don't think that'll be a problem if we just basically not meet again until June.
Planning on going?
There's yourself, Randy, and Mike.
Yeah, I am.
And then Jake Bennett from our department will be going, and Councilman Ivy. So there'll be 5 of you. So
Yeah, I think I'd be fine canceling the meeting
Okay.
next month.
so that Enchant item is really the only one that I can see that would be somewhat pressing. And if we needed to, we can do I think it's a 24-hour notice is all we need. And it'll just be a one item agenda. So
Yeah, let's do that. We'll just cancel next month and address anything that has to come up. So I think with the plan, it seems like as we get more into this energy debate and things that are going, they'll probably be looking for sources, and that'll probably generate a lot of interest in the project also. So
yeah, I agree. I think you'll, as you look at the news and other reports and articles, I think you're seeing more and more groups realizing they need something like this in order to meet their carbon goals and still keep the lights on, basically. So
well, and as a public, it's obviously hard to look at something on paper that's so far out and down the line, years down the line, to say, okay, yeah, here's what we're doing, compared to when it finally does start construction and get really, really going on it and become more of a reality also.
correct.
So, all right. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Rick. I motion to adjourn.
Okay, so we will not meet next month, and our next meeting will be in June, and we have a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
So Randy first and Mark second. Randy, you want to start?
Meyer, aye.
Mark?
Hauser, aye.
Todd?
Spriggs, aye.
And Dinsmore, aye. So thank you. Thanks for all that attended, and Rick for presenting, and we shall see everyone in 2 months.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And Jake will be getting in touch on that. We've got the city's